Our first story begins on a cold winter night in the quiet town of Silver Creek. Four friends, Mia, Jess, Liam, and Ethan, gathered for a sleepover at Mia's house. Her home was an old Victorian mansion that her family had recently inherited. The house was full of antique furniture and creaky floors, but what intrigued the friends most was the attic, rumored to hold secrets from the past. After a few hours of movies and snacks, let's explore the attic. Armed with flashlights, they climbed the narrow stairs. The attic was cluttered with old furniture, dusty books, and cobwebs. In the corner, they found an ornate, full-length mirror covered with a tattered sheet. Curiosity got the better of them, and they unveiled the mirror. As they stared into it, the reflection began to change. The room in the mirror looked the same, but the reflection of the friends began to distort. Their faces twisted into grotesque, horrifying versions of themselves. Suddenly, the mirror's glass shattered and the room plunged into darkness. Panic set in as they scrambled to find the flashlight. When they finally managed to turn it on, Mia was missing. They searched the attic frantically, but she was nowhere to be found. Her parents, alarmed by the noise, rushed upstairs. They called the police, but Mia was never found. The mirror was removed the next day, but the memory of that night haunted Jess, Liam, and Ethan forever. Several months later, Jess and Ethan decided to visit a psychic, hoping to find some answers. The psychic, an elderly woman with piercing blue eyes, listened intently to their story. The mirror was a portal to another dimension, a realm of lost souls and trapped spirits. Mia had been taken by the entities that resided within it. The journey would be perilous, and few have ever returned from the other side. Determined to save their friend, they agreed to the psychic's instructions. They returned to the attic with the psychic, who performed a ritual to reopen the portal. The mirror reappeared, and the psychic guided Jess and Ethan through it. They found themselves in a twisted version of the attic where shadows lurked and eerie whispers filled the air. They navigated the labyrinthine halls, calling out for Mia. After what felt like hours, they found her pale and terrified, trapped in a glass cage. As they tried to free her, the shadows closed in. The psychic's voice echoed in their minds, urging them to hurry. Just as they managed to break the glass, the shadows attacked. They pulled Mia out and raced back to the portal, barely escaping the grasp of the malevolent entities. As they stumbled back into the real world, the mirror shattered once more, sealing the portal forever. Mia was safe, but forever changed. She spoke little of her time in the other dimension, and the friends swore never to speak of the mirror again. The attic remained sealed, a silent testament to the horrors they had faced. However, the psychic warned them that such portals could appear anywhere, and the darkness might not be fully contained. Our second story takes us to the suburban neighborhood of Maplewood. Samantha invited her best friends, Kate and Emily, for a sleepover. Her family had just moved into a new house, and the girls were excited to explore it. The house was modern and spacious, but Samantha's parents warned them about the basement, saying it was off-limits due to ongoing renovations. Ignoring the warning, the girls decided to check out the basement after midnight. They tiptoed downstairs and found the door unlocked. The basement was dimly lit, with exposed brick walls and a musty smell. As they walked further in, they heard faint whispers. At first they thought it was the wind, but the whispers grew louder and clearer, calling their names. Terrified, they turned to leave, but the basement door slammed shut. They banged on it and screamed, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers turned into sinister laughter. Maybe we can use it to communicate with whatever's in here." Desperate and scared, they agreed. The planchette moved on its own, spelling out "Leave now." The lights flickered and a cold breeze swept through the basement. The girls screamed for help, and suddenly the door burst open. Samantha's parents rushed in, finding the girls huddled together, crying. They moved out of the house the next day. The new owners, unaware of the basement's secrets, moved in a week later. Samantha, Kate, and Emily never spoke of that night again, but they all carried the fear and dread of the whispers that haunted them. A few months after moving out, Samantha's parents revealed they had found old newspaper clippings in the basement detailing the tragic history of the house. Decades ago, a family had been brutally murdered in that very basement, and their restless spirits were believed to haunt the house ever since. Kate couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed her from the basement. She began experiencing night terrors and hearing whispers in her room at night. Desperate for peace, she sought out a medium who confirmed her worst fears. The spirits had attached themselves to her. Emily, too, was not spared. She started seeing shadowy figures in her peripheral vision and felt a constant, oppressive presence around her. Her grades slipped and she became increasingly withdrawn and paranoid. The girls reconnected one night, hoping to find a solution together. They returned to the old house, armed with sage and the determination to confront the spirits. The new owners reluctantly allowed them entry, sensing the urgency in their pleas. The basement was even more foreboding than they remembered. As they performed a cleansing ritual, the whispers grew louder and more aggressive. Shadows swirled around them, and the temperature plummeted. In a final act of desperation, they chanted prayers and burned the sage. The spirits seemed to resist at first, but then the atmosphere shifted. The whispers faded, and a sense of calm washed over the room. The girls felt a momentary relief, believing they had succeeded. However, the victory was short-lived. As they turned to leave, the basement door slammed shut again. This time, no amount of banging or screaming could open it. The new owners called the police, but by the time they arrived, the girls had vanished without a trace. The house was condemned and eventually demolished, but the memory of the whispering walls lingered in the minds of all who knew the story. Some say that on quiet nights you can still hear faint whispers coming from the empty lot where the house once stood. Our third and final story takes place in a remote cabin in the woods. 5 friends, Sarah, Daniel, Mike, Lucy, and Tom, decided to spend a weekend at a secluded cabin to celebrate Sarah's birthday. The cabin, surrounded by dense forest, was perfect for a getaway. They spent the day hiking and the evening roasting marshmallows by the fireplace. As the night grew colder, they gathered in the living room to tell ghost stories. Tom, always the skeptic, challenged the others to summon a spirit using an old book of spells they found in the cabin. Reluctantly, they agreed. They formed a circle, lit candles, and read from the book. At first, nothing happened. Tom laughed it off, but then the temperature in the room dropped dramatically. The candles flickered, and the air grew heavy with an oppressive presence. They heard footsteps upstairs, even though they were all accounted for. The door to the living room creaked open, and an icy breeze blew through, extinguishing the candles. Panic set in as they realized they weren't alone. Sarah suggested they leave, but the front door wouldn't open. They were trapped. The footsteps grew louder, descending the stairs slowly. The group huddled together, fear paralyzing them. A shadowy figure appeared at the foot of the stairs, its eyes glowing a sickly yellow. Daniel, trying to be brave, grabbed a fireplace poker and swung at the figure. It vanished, but the door finally opened. They fled into the night, running through the dark forest until they reached their car. They drove away, vowing never to return. The next morning, park rangers found the cabin empty with no signs of the friends. Their car was discovered abandoned at the edge of the forest. Sarah, Daniel, Mike, Lucy, and Tom were never seen again. The cabin remains a silent witness to the horrors that unfolded within its walls. Years later, a group of hikers stumbled upon the cabin. They found the Book of Spells and, out of curiosity, read from it. That night, they too heard footsteps and felt an oppressive presence. The cycle of terror began anew, and the legend of the unseen guest continued to haunt those who dared to spend the night in the cabin. One of the hikers, desperate to escape, set fire to the cabin in a final bid for freedom. The flames consumed the structure, but as the cabin burned, the hikers heard unearthly screams and saw the shadowy figure emerge from the inferno, unscathed. The forest grew silent once more, but the legend persisted. Locals say the spirit now roams the woods, searching for new victims, and the echoes of the cabin's last night can still be heard in the dead of night.